Hey everybody, welcome to the WordPress Pittsburgh meetup. Today we're going to talk about security and backups. I'm so glad everybody came today. I haven't had a meetup for a couple months now. And if you have any feedback on this meetup, you're welcome to let me know during or after the call. If there's any certain topics you want to talk about for future meetups, if there's anything that you want to present on. We're always looking for presenters. I don't always like to present myself. Actually, I don't like to present myself, maybe once a year or so, but happy to do it. And I like to talk about these things, security and backups, because they're so important. So yeah, so I have a demo site here that I was going to share my screen. And feel free to stop me anytime if you have a question, if you want to put something in the chat. Hopefully I'll see it. And let's see, hold on, let me change my window here. Also, just to let you know that this will be put up on our website. It's wppittsburgh.com. Hold on one second, let me get mute here. Okay, I'm just going to mute everybody so we don't have any feedback. This will be up on our website at wppittsburgh.com. If you go to the main link and look under, I think, blog, it will be here. I do have the post up already. And then tomorrow I will probably put the video on YouTube and it'll be embedded here on the post too. And you'll see our links for YouTube up here. You found this through Meetup, so you understand meetup.com. I like to tweet from the WP Pittsburgh Twitter handle, but I'm not on Facebook. So some people are there talking about things, but I'm not on Facebook personally, so I don't do much there. But we have a couple other, couple places to talk. And like I said, we have been doing the virtual meetups and like to do those. So anybody's welcome at any time. And if you want to present, let me know. Or if there's something you're interested in, let me know too, and we can see if we can arrange it. So I have a demo site here using Pair Networks. So Pair Networks is a hosting company here in Pittsburgh, and I just spun up just a plain old demo site. I'm just using the 2022 theme, I guess now, time goes by fast. Really, we're not even going to look at the front end of the site all that much. But we are going to talk about plugins. So a lot of times what happens is that we have our website hosted somewhere, let's say Bluehost, DreamHost, GoDaddy, HostGator, any number of places. And we maybe think that there are backups included, and we may think that there is some level of security, but it varies widely from host to host. So regardless, I think, of what your host is offering, I like to have my own additional layer of security, my own additional backups personally. And maybe they're duplicated. So maybe my host does offer backups and some security. That's fine and great. And maybe they don't. So, this is something that, I have control over. So I do recommend this, and I recommend to my clients as well. So we can start with backups first. It's a little bit easier. And I do this very early on. So if you're somebody here who does not have a website, as soon as you start and wherever you're going to be hosted and create your first website, one of the first things you should do, I teach a class, and one of the first things we do, we get into the website, we set up the backups, we set up the security, and then it should just run automatically. It's good to check everything now and again, but everything should be running, and you shouldn't have to worry about it too much. So let's look for backups, and we'll talk about a couple. Actually, just search for backup. We'll talk about a couple options for backup plugins. So the one that I like and I work with is Updraft, and you'll see that is the first one. They're always in a different results. So if you search for backup tomorrow, it may be a different in a different order, and maybe a new plugin will have come on the scene, or maybe a plugin will have left. So you're not always going to get them in this exact order. So we'll come back to Updraft. But when we're looking for a backup plugin, and you can use any that you like, you want to look for things, I like to say, in this gray box right here. So a lot of good reviews. This has 5-star reviews, 6,411. They're probably not all 5 stars, but we have a good solid base of reviews, a lot of active installations. So we're seeing this is installed on 3+ million sites, 3+ million WordPress sites. So that shows that it is widely used. And from that, we can infer that it probably has support. Last updated 3 days ago. That is good. You don't want a plugin that's updated all the time. And I will say that Updraft sometimes does. They update and update and update, and then they're good for a while. And you do want it to be compatible with your version of WordPress. And hopefully you're keeping your version of WordPress up to date. Jetpack is another one. Now, Jetpack has some free and paid options, and I should say Updraft does too. For this demo, we won't need to purchase anything at all. So we will use the free features of Updraft, and then I will talk about what the paid features are just for your reference. Jetpack, I actually don't know what is free and what is paid in here, but Jetpack is one of those things that's kind of like all in one. So your security backup, all these things are kind of bundled together. I know a lot of people use Jetpack. Obviously, it has a lot of active installations. I don't personally use it, but it is something that is out there. Back WP Up is another one. This is really distracting to me, this little spinny cloud thing. So this is another popular one. A lot of good reviews, a lot of active installations, last updated 2 months ago. That's not too bad. Untested with my version of WordPress. I'm not too worried about this because it was updated 2 months ago. And my version of WordPress, I think, is maybe just a couple weeks old. So I'm not too worried about this, but you could click on this and learn more and kind of see, make sure that people are still happy with this plugin. Not sure when it came out to begin with. Some of the backup plugins that you'll see are partly for migration as well. So this one is not just backing up, but also to migrate and to create a staging site. And a staging site is just a copy of your existing site where you make changes and test things out. So this is another one, WP Staging. They tout it as backup, duplicator, and migration. I would say in my mind, those are more focused on the migration part and less on the backup part. I just want something that does a good backup. And then if I need migration features, I can look into that. Blog Vault is another one I know that people use. Some good reviews here, active installations, updated recently and compatible. Duplicator, again, that's more so in my mind for migration. I'm surprised that Backup Buddy is not up in here. WP Vivid Backups, that's another one. And there's other ones as well. So look at this one. It does have good reviews and active installations, but last updated 7 months ago. So, I wouldn't be too worried about that, but the longer that it goes unupdated, the more I wonder if it's just no longer being supported. So I do like to choose plugins that are being supported. So like here's another one, WP All Backup. But not a ton of good reviews, not a lot of active installations. Last updated 8 months ago, untested with my version of WordPress. This isn't something that I would choose. You'll see there's 29 pages here as well, so you can scroll through all those pages. But like I said, we're going to install Updraft, so we'll click Install Now, and we will then activate it. Okay, so like I mentioned, we will just have to set this up one time, and then we shouldn't have to worry about it from here. So you can press here to start. For some reason, I always just close that pop-up and I just go to settings. But you'll also see that it is listed under settings and Updraft Plus. So settings and Updraft Plus listed here, so we can get back to this screen if we need to. Now, at any time, we can just click this backup now button. Sometimes it's nice to take a backup before you make a lot of major changes if you don't have a staging site. But the way I like to approach this is to go to the settings tab and set my backups to be taken automatically. So instead of manual here, I would choose either daily or weekly or fortnightly. So weekly is mostly okay for I would say, I don't know, a fair number of sites, but just think about how often your content changes. And if something happened, if you went back a week, would that be okay for you? Or would you want to go back a day? Or do you really not make that many changes to your website and going back a fortnight would be okay? So 14 days. So just think about if you needed that backup, how far back would you want to go to get it? So we're going to do weekly, and I do like to keep more than 2 backups. I personally do 3 to 4, really up to you, whatever you're comfortable with. Also, I will show you how to store these off-site. So think about if you're going to store them either on Google Drive or Dropbox, how much space do you have to store them somewhere else? So, if you have a really big site and you want to store 20 backups, do you have space on your Google Drive to store that many backups? Now, I also back my database up the same weekly and 3. So I like to make these match. And if you use the premium version of this plugin, you'll have some additional features here as well. So one of those is the way I have mine set up. I keep 21 backups. I keep 14 days in a row of backups, and then 1 weekly backup, which is like seven of those after that. So 21 total, 14 in a row, and weekly before that. So that is just an option. But for, I would say, most people, again, this free version is fine, and weekly fine, 3 backups fine, and make your files and database match. So here I mentioned that it is good to connect and store these off-site. So it's kind of the thing where if something happens to your website host, if your backups are stored with the website host, then like now you have nothing. Now the chances of that happening, I would say, are slim, but I do like to store mine separately just in case. So I use Dropbox, but Google Drive is another one. Some of these items are with the premium version. So I think maybe Backblaze, and maybe OneDrive, I believe, are with the premium version of the plugin. But Dropbox, I know, and Google Drive are free. Also, it says here that we can send the backup to more than one destination with the premium version. But again, I think we're okay. So I'm just going to pick Dropbox here. So what to include in the backup? This is already set for us, and this is good. I do want to include my plugins. I want to include my themes. I want to include any uploads. So anything that I add to the media library, my images, my PDF documents, whatever's in there, I do want to include. But I don't want to include my backups. You don't want backups of backups and then backups of backups. And, then your backups are getting bigger. So we don't want to include anything in the uploads folder that has backup in the folder name. So, and anything like this, we don't want to include that. And then we do want to include any other directories in WP content, but again, not including any backups or any caching. We don't need to back up any caching folders. So this is all fine. We're not going to make any changes to this. We can just go with what it says here. And we can also, if we want to, have a basic report sent. If we want to, I don't need more emails, so I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to click Save Changes. And then what will happen is, because I chose Dropbox, it's going to say, hey, you have to authorize access to your Dropbox account. So I will just click this link. And if I'm logged into Dropbox, then it should work automatically. If not, I'll have to log in. So I'm just going to complete the setup. And I was logged in, so that's great. And it's telling me here success. I have authenticated my Dropbox account. I've used quite a bit of my Dropbox storage because I have a lot of backups, and that's my account name. So we're all good. And a backup is happening right now. So there's nothing on this website, so this backup should be pretty quick to go through. So we'll just see it here, hopefully under existing backups whenever it is finished. There's a log that we can look at if we want to. Yeah, we're good. So if you look here at the bottom of the screen, you'll see my existing backups. I have 1 backup, and September 19th, this is the date and time. This little sign is for Dropbox. If you have sent yours to Google Drive, it will be the little Google Drive icon. And I have backed up my database, my plugins, my themes, my uploads, and any other things I've found. So I could click on these to download. So that is one thing about Updraft that I don't love. Your backups are, there's at least five different files. So when you download your backup, you don't just download one zipped file, you have to download the database and the plugins and the themes and the others. So it's not terrible. Again, I think this is a great plugin to use. Free versions are really nice. but you do have to download it if you want to in all these different things. But you could look on your Dropbox or again, Google Drive, and just make sure that you do see it there. We could delete this backup if we wanted to. We could view the log. Now I mentioned that some backup plugins do have migration or cloning capabilities, and that is something that's available here, but with the premium version. So you'll see that it'll say like, hey, do you want to migrate or clone? You can look at the premium version. But I think for again, our purposes, I think that this is fine, this is good. And then in a week's time, we'll see another one here, and it'll be great. So any questions about the backups, you can unmute, or if you want to put something in the chat. But this is good. Everything's all set up and running nicely. Any questions at all? Okay. Well, if you have questions later, let me know. We can always come back to this, but this is what I wanted to talk about here for backups, and everything is set and running. Another thing that you can do if you choose is you could enable auto updates. Now there's kind of I don't know, people have different opinions on auto updates. So what this is when the developers of Updraft have a new version of the plugin, you'll get a notification here, and it will say, hey, version 1.22.23 is available. You can update. If you have auto updates on, your plugin will automatically update. Now, that could cause issues, but also not updating the plugin could cause issues as well. So this is up to you, totally up to you if you want to enable auto updates or not. I don't want to advise you either way, but you could think about doing it, or what might be good as well is to just log into your site maybe every week or so and do the updates and make sure everything's working properly. So there was a question in the chat. Have you ever had to restore a site from Updraft? Yes, I have had to do that before. I hate restoring sites, but mostly pretty seamless. What I have had some issues with were this migration, cloning from one to another. Sometimes it just takes a long time. So, but that I guess may be expected, and it really depends too, I would think, on the size of the site and the host. So I have restored it, and I do have Updraft on every single one of my sites, and I check those backups every week, make sure they're running properly. And so yeah, they're there for restoring if needed. Another option I should say is a separate service. So if you have more than one website, you could use a service like ManageWP, and ManageWP has backups. They do, I think, a free monthly backup. And if you want daily backups, I think you pay maybe $2 per site per month. So that's an option as well. Those are stored completely outside of your website. Yeah, so far so good. No, knock on wood, that I haven't had any other snags there. Can I download the backed up files to your own device and restore them yourself? Yes, you can download them to your own device, and they're actually already available. If you let's say, for example, you use Dropbox, they're there on your Dropbox, but yes, you could put them on your I guess your local machine. You could sync them locally. Can you restore them? I'm not sure. I want to say that if you were to pull that in, Updraft would know, and they would say, hey, you need the premium version to be able to do this. So what I like to say is having the backups and doing the free stuff is all good. If you have a problem where you're like, oh no, my site got hacked, I need the backup, paying the, I don't know, actually, let's look and see what it is. I don't work for Updraft and I have no stake in their stuff, but let's see, paying the $70 a year might be worth it to you to be able to restore quickly and easily. So that's an option, I would say. But you might not need it until you need it. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So any other updraft questions. I want to say like, I don't, another one is Backup Buddy. I don't know why Backup Buddy didn't show up in the list. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened to Backup Buddy. Oh, it's premium only. Okay, thanks, Amy. Yeah, I wasn't sure. And I know that Backup Buddy had some issues recently, but also Updraft did too. If you search for any plugin and look for their change log, you should be able to see what the newest version is and when it came out last. So you'll see, and I did mention that Updraft just had a couple. So the 5th of September, the 9th of September, and the 16th of September, they had a couple, update, but they hadn't had an update since a couple in August. And then, but not since July here. So you can look and see, what they're fixing. Something is fixed, a new feature is added, something is being tweaked. So you could look at whatever plugin you're looking at, look for their change log and see, kind of how often they're releasing things, what they're fixing, and so on. Okay, all right. So let's talk a little bit about security. Now, again, with your host, you may have some things that are included, for example. So I'm just going to show you here. Again, I mentioned Pair Networks, and they have again, I don't work for Pair Networks, nothing. I'm just talking about plugins that I use. Okay, so actually, let's talk about their backups. They have a place for backups, and you can do you get to pick a day. You could do a certain day of the week every day and how many to keep, up to 5. So that I don't know is on by default. So when you first sign up at a host, or if you've never looked, go in and see what your host is offering. If they do offer some kind of backups, go in and see how to set those up. Or they may offer backups, but if you need one, you have to pay to get it. So just familiarize yourself with what your host is offering in terms of security and backups. So just looking at kind of, this is what Pair offers. And then I think they have a couple things for security, including the certificate. I think they used to call it malware scanning. So here, some basic malware scanning is enabled. And that is, I think, scanning every day. So every Sunday, this is scanning for malware, and it'll send me an email if they find something. Also, this, I'm not sure what intrusion defense is, but that is something that I could purchase additionally. So just get to know what your host is offering you. Now, I will say that Pair Networks does install WordFence for us, and I uninstalled it so that I could show you how to install it. So I don't have it on here now, but let's just search for security and let's see some options here. So WordFence is another one. Again, lots of active installations, pretty good reviews, last updated 9 hours ago, compatible with my version of WordPress. Other options include all-in-one. Again, pretty good. You don't necessarily want to go with the one that has more active installations, or the one that has more stars, or the one that was last updated, or the one that's compatible. It's kind of like what works for you. You could install a few, look at their features and say, oh, I really like this one over that one. Or, you could rely on things like this, meetups like this, what people are saying, maybe what some of your friends use and what they like or what they don't like, to determine what's going to work best for you. I mentioned Jetpack does have some security included in here. iTheme security is another one. Again, lots of good reviews, active installations. SiteGround has their own security. I don't know that I would use this on a different website. I would maybe only use it if I was hosted with SiteGround, me personally. This is a Clean Talk one, security and malware scan. And some of these are probably the freemium model as well, where they have a base set of features that are free. And then if you want additional features, you can pay more. Here's a Hide My WP Ghost, security. I haven't heard of some of these. Bulletproof security doesn't look too bad. Malcare, I've heard of, I think. Security Ninja. Not a ton, but some good reviews. It seems like the further you go down, the more you're not really getting, specific things like Elementor. Like, why is that listed here? Because it's not a security plugin. So just be careful that, you're actually finding security plugins. So we'll install WordFence, and then I'll show you some about that. So WordFence has two parts, the firewall and the malware scan, and they do offer some additional features that I really like. So let's look at WordFence here. And the first thing it's going to ask me is, well, yes, I agree to their policies. It wants to know where to send my notifications. So let me go to all options. So let's look under all options here. I wonder if it already has my email address. Yep, it already does. So it already knows. So it may ask you, depending on your host and your setup, it may ask you, hey, where do I email alerts? Because it is scanning your website, if it finds something, it needs to know where to find you to let you know that something is wrong. Now, the base WordFence installation is going to email you all day, every day, all day long. So I do recommend coming in here and tweaking some of those settings, because otherwise what will happen is that you'll get so many emails that you will ignore them. And then when something happens, you'll be like, oh no, I ignored the email, and that's not good. So let's start from the top. Actually, let's start from here. When you first install WordFence, it's going to say, hey, let's optimize the firewall. So we'll click here to configure. It's going to say that yours may look different. So we're running on an Nginx server. So yours may say something else here. It may want to download some files as some backups. Depending on your type of server, it's going to put some code in somewhere. So download them if you need to and continue, and you probably won't have any problems. And then what you'll see is if you look on the firewall status right here, it will typically be in learning mode. And in a week's time, it will go from learning mode to enabled and protecting. And you can read a little bit about that right here. Excuse me one second. I just need to turn my notifications off. Okay. So right now it's in learning mode. It'll be in learning mode for about a week. And then we can dismiss this because we did just do this step. Okay. So let's go back to all options, and we're just going to go section by section and talk about the options here. Okay, so view customization. I do like to display all options. That is this right here. Every once in a while, this is not turned on, and I'm like, why do I get to all the options? And it makes me crazy. So I do like this, having this, because everything is all in one place. You can also display blocking and live traffic here, but I typically don't need these, and I can get to those items if needed. So I do like to have this on. Also notice that the free license is active. There is a key. I can upgrade to premium. I personally have not found a need for the premium version of WordFence, but people do have it. And I think they have a couple of different packages now. So up to you again if you want to upgrade, but at least for now, I would say the free version is good. Update WordFence automatically when a new version is released. Yes, that's a good thing to do. But again, go back to what I just said, where it's a risk if it updates automatically. When you update it yourself, you can actually see if something broke, and you could roll back if needed, or you could deactivate, or whatever it is. When it's happening automatically, you may not know that something broke. So it is good to go into your site, I would say at least weekly, and just make sure everything's working properly. Just the recommended here is fine. I do like to hide the WordPress version. That is a good thing. Yeah, you might not have 0 day. Yeah, there are some, and especially recently with Backup Buddy, there have been some errors where it's like, you need to update this immediately. So that is tough. Yeah, how do you know? I do have certain plugins that are on auto update and other plugins that are not on auto update. So yeah, it is tough to kind of make that trade-off. And some hosts will let you know. So I have a couple sites on Flywheel, and Flywheel will send an email to me and say, hey, these plugins are vulnerable. You need to update them right now. Whereas other hosts don't do that. So you're really just like pay attention to your site, I guess, and keep things up to date. Okay, let's see, not worried about these ones. Dashboard notifications. So I'm a big fan of keeping my dashboard clean. I'll just show you the dashboard here. The more things you install, the more nonsense is here on the dashboard, like all this stuff. I personally don't like this. Now you can turn these off from screen options. So I can say like, I don't want to see the WordFence activity in the past week, but here you can do it as well. Updates needed, scan status. So I turn those off so that I don't see that stuff. Email alert preferences. Here is where we want to make our changes. So email me when WordFence is automatically updated. So if you do have auto updates on, and you want to get an email when it's updated, this is good to have turned on. That way you can know, okay, I'm going to go check and make sure that everything was okay with that. So that is an option as well. Email me if WordFence is deactivated. That's a good one. If somebody gets into your site and deactivates WordFence, it might be good for you to know if it's deactivated or if the firewall is turned off. But this would alert me with scan results of this severity level or greater. Low is too low. I would say either high or critical. Typically, I'll do high. If they are alerting you for low things and you're getting all these other alerts, again, you're just going to be getting emails out the wazoo. So I would turn this to high. When an IP address is blocked, when someone is logged out from login, when someone is blocked from logging in for using a password found in a breach, these are some things you could turn off. And what I like to say is if this is your first website, and your first go around, sometimes it is nice to get these messages just to see what is actually happening, that people are trying to get into your site. You think like, oh, I'm just, some person with a blog in small town America, nobody cares about me. Untrue. People want to get in your site. There are hackers out there that are actively trying to get in. So having these on and actually seeing that people are trying to get in is kind of enlightening at first. But then after a while, you're like, okay, I get it. Somebody's trying to log in. You don't need to tell me. So you could turn these off then eventually. Alert me when administrators log in. Alert me when there's a large increase in attacks. That's fine, but I would not send unlimited alerts. I would maybe send maximum email alerts to send per hour, like maybe one per hour. So that's an option as well. So again, set these what you think you would want them to be. Get some emails from WordFence for maybe a week or 2 weeks, and then come back and revisit and say like, okay, do I really need all of these, and kind of tweak them from there. Activity report. This is another thing. I don't really care about the email summary. You could get it once a day, once a week, once a month. Once a month might be fine. I really don't need it, so I don't want that. And again, I want to keep my dashboard clean, so I'm going to turn this off. Okay, so I'm going to save some changes here, but we'll continue to go through these options. Okay, basic firewall. Wait, where to go? Close these guys. Okay, basic firewall. This is where we saw before, so we're in learning mode, and then in a week we will be enabled and protecting. You'll see also that real-time IPs, you have to upgrade to premium, so it's up to you if you want that. But again, at least at first, I would probably say that the free version is fine. There are some allowed services. So if you are using Security, Uptime Robot, Manage WP, sometimes I will turn these on. These are the defaults. I will turn this on. You can sometimes immediately block IPs if you'd like. And one thing you may see when you log in, an error at the top, it may say that WordFence was not able to refresh the rules. So what happens is that hackers try new ways to get into your site every day. So if they find a new way to get in, companies like WordFence and other security companies will have to figure out ways to block those things. So those are the rules. So with the free version of WordFence, the rules are refreshed, I believe, once a week. If they can't refresh, if for some reason you get an error, it says not able to refresh the rules, you can click this button and it will refresh your rules and you'll be good. So again, hackers are trying to get in, they find new ways. Security companies have to figure out how to block those ways. Those are the rules that are set. And you'll refresh those rules only if WordFence can't do it for you. So that is something that I click now and again. Brute force, this is a good this one's kind of a double-edged sword. So log out after how many login failures? I figure if you can't log in after 10 attempts, something is wrong. You could make this lower, but what happens is, like, if you personally forget your login and you have a couple login failures, like, you might lock yourself out. So I think 10 is good. Forgot password attempts. Again, I would say probably 10 is good there. Count the failures over 4 hours. I like to immediately lock out invalid usernames like admin. Nobody should have admin. And I don't want people using passwords leaked in data breaches. So I would say that probably for most of you, you have your site with just your user. If you do have other users on your site and they are admins, you don't want them to use passwords that have been leaked in data breaches. So you could make this for all users with published posts or just admins. Enforce strong passwords. This is really important. You want people to have nice, strong, long passwords. So long, 16, 20, 24 characters long, uppercase, lowercase, symbols, and numbers. Okay, so nice combination. I have made the jump to a password manager. I use 1Password. I know people are still trying to do it the way they, the dog's name, incrementing the number, whatever. I just urge you strongly to just make sure that that's a nice, long, strong password. This is good. A lot of these defaults are good. Don't let WordPress reveal valid users in login errors, because you really just don't want people to be able to get in because you've revealed a valid user. Some of these not super important. You can just kind of keep the defaults. I don't typically mess with the rate limiting. You could go through here if you want to, but I wouldn't worry about that or this either. Let's see. This is only available with the premium version, that you can block geographic areas. Scan scheduling for the free version, WordFence decides when to do it. So you can't manually schedule it. That's a premium feature. So it scans daily, typically in the middle of the night, I would say, and I wouldn't worry about too much. One thing that might be important is, and I'm not sure, I don't know this for a fact, but is setting your settings for your time zone. So I'm in that New York time zone. So just in case that matters, I just like to do that. So if WordFence is like, oh, middle of the night, but it doesn't know where I am, then it might be scanning during the day. So, okay. What else? Who did that? Okay, this one's standard scan that is recommended. There is also a custom scan when you pick some of these additional options. So here are a couple options here. So these are the default. Anytime we check or uncheck one of these, this is going to change to custom, and that's fine. But just let me explain some of these, including the ones, or especially the ones that aren't checked. So scan theme files against repository versions for changes, and scan plugin files against repository versions for changes. So when you go to plugins and you go to, again, we're going to add new, we were searching for security. This is the repository. These are all the options available on the WordPress repository. And another way you can get to this is to go to wordpress.org/plugins. So this is the repository as well. And these should be the same. This is the same view. So what it's saying is, whenever you, actually, let me get back to where I am. Whenever you install a plugin, let's say a WordFence or something else, WordFence is going to scan that plugin against what's in the repository. If it is different, is going to alert you. It's going to say, hey, this plugin and the plugin that are in the repository are different, because somebody could get into your site and they could make changes to your plugin files or your theme files. So I kind of like to do this. I like to turn these on because we want to make sure that the version I'm running is the version that's in the repository. So I turn these on, and then this will change to custom. I also like to scan files outside of my WordPress installation. Sometimes I create a folder, sometimes for, let's say, audio, even though you shouldn't do that. I don't know. Anyway, sometimes you can create folders outside of your installation and you can scan those as well. So I do turn these items on, and the rest are fine. Check the strength of passwords, scan for suspicious admin users created outside of WordPress. If somebody goes directly to the database and creates a user, scan for out-of-date, abandoned, and vulnerable plugins. These are all good things to be scanning for. I just turn on those additional items, and then this is a custom scan. You could change some of these performance options if you'd like. I typically don't. And I also don't do anything here under advanced. Okay, so let's save and then let's talk about a couple other things. So once you have kind of tweaked your WordFence settings to be the settings that you want, so you have a brand new site, you install WordFence, you get a bunch of emails, you're like, too many emails, you change them, you're happy with the number of emails you're getting, where you're actually reading the ones you get and WordFence is doing a good job. If you have another website, you could export these options and then import them to your other site. So it's pretty cool. Again, this is only if you have more than one site. You can export your options. It's going to give you a big long key. And you can copy that key. And then you would just paste it in here and import. And it's just going to check all the boxes that you like and uncheck all the boxes that you like. So you don't have to go to that second website that you have and set everything up again because you're happy with the way things are to begin with. So that is something that is pretty cool too. Also, there are, actually, I'm going to jump back really quickly. Speaking of more than one website, another thing that you can do on the dashboard is you can connect to WordFence Central. So this is free feature. You can go to wordfence.com and you can create a username and password. And then with each of your sites, you can say connect this site. And then in WordFence Central, you can actually see the list of sites and their scan statuses, and you can get to any scan errors from one dashboard as well. So I do connect my sites because I have multiple to WordFence Central, and really you're just getting the view wherever the scan is. Let's see. You're getting the results from here. Actually, I'll just start a new scan and then let's see what happens. You're getting the results from here in WordFence Central. So again, if you have more than one website, it's kind of nice to see them all in one place. Now, one thing about the scan is that if I click away from this, it's going to stop scanning. So when you do an on-demand scan like this, you have to leave the window open and the window has to be active. But again, don't worry because WordFence is scanning at some point whenever they choose to scan. So that's something that is happening. So let's just kind of go through this. Does anybody have any questions in the meantime while we watch this run? It's not super fun, but hopefully it won't take too long because it's a really small site because we don't have any content on it. So, but it is scanning some other things that we told it to scan. So hopefully this runs, and then after that, we're going to talk about adding a reCAPTCHA to your login form and also doing two-factor authentication. So setting up two-factor authentication on your site. Now, one thing that we'll look at, I'm just going to get my phone here. When you set up two-factor authentication, there's an app that you can get. Oh, look, see here, we're finished. Everything's good. If there are any issues, if there is a plugin that's different from the repository, if something needs to be updated, or any of those other things, it will say right here the issues in this list. Okay, so let's look at login security again and two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication is a nice thing to have, but you have to be careful because again, you don't want to lock yourself out. So I use the Authenticator app on my phone. So if you just search on your smartphone, search in the App Store or whatever, Google Store, whatever it is, for Authenticator, you can install that and you'll set up a new, I guess, what's it called? A new, I don't know, a new thing, a new item. I have a couple different codes listed in here. And you'll scan the QR code with your phone. So you'll scan this code right here, and then it'll walk you through the steps to set up two-factor authentication. Now, you do want to download the recovery codes. I know this says optional, and I wish it didn't. Download those codes and put them somewhere important. So once two-factor authentication is set up, what will happen is you'll log out of your site. You'll log in as regular, like you did before with your username and password, and then it'll say, hey, what's the code? You'll go over to your phone, you'll open the Authenticator app, you'll see the code that's there, you'll type the code in, and you'll log in. So that's an additional layer of security for you to set up two-factor authentication. Now if you're not using WordFence, if you picked one of those other security plugins, that plugin may or may not have two-factor authentication. There are plugins that you can add that have two-factor authentication. So if let's say you're using a security plugin that doesn't have it, you can pick another plugin just for two-factor authentication. So I do recommend it, but again, you just have to be careful. Now, if you, let's say, lose your phone or you get a new phone and you forget to transfer those over, here's where you can use these recovery codes as needed. So I do like to download those codes and put them somewhere. I keep my codes in 1Password. Again, nice place to keep all my stuff. So those are important. So you can activate that and then it's all set up. I think you can also force admin users to use two-factor authentication as well. So if you have a website where there's 2 users, 2 admins, you and someone else, you can require them to set up two-factor authentication as well. So another good thing to do. And another, yeah, I think you do that here. Another thing here is enabling a reCAPTCHA on your login page. So, and your user registration pages. So this is a good thing to do as well. So you would just create a new reCAPTCHA. I can never ever remember the URL for reCAPTCHA, so I just have this saved. It's google.com/reCAPTCHA/admin. So what you can do is you can create a new reCAPTCHA here. You would just put your URL. So myurl.com is a label, or you could just put the site name. And you do want a V3 because what it's seeing right here, actually, let me drag this over. What it's seeing right here is, close some text, that it wants a V3. Now the V3 is not the checkbox. The checkbox is the V2. The V3 is that little floating item, normally on the bottom right-hand side, the little reCAPTCHA. So it's working, but you don't have to find the fire hydrants or pick out the bridges or any nonsense like that. It just kind of works. It just kind of figures out if you're a human or not on its own. So you would say V3, you would add your domain, you would accept. You can send alerts or whatever. When you hit submit, it would give you the keys. So you would check this and you would add the site key and the secret key. This is fine. And you would save. Where to save? I don't know. Maybe just save. Oh, it would probably just come up here. Yes, this would be enabled once I made some changes. And it would show this. If you wanted to show with WooCommerce, it would show. Actually, no. It would just then show on your login page. So that's another good thing to do if you'd like. So it really just kind of depends how secure you want to get, how in-depth you want to get. Setting up two-factor authentication can be a pain. Like, oh, it's on my phone's in the other room, I have to go get it so I can log into my website. But again, you're trying to prevent people from logging in because really it's the prevention part that we're so kind of worked up about, because dealing with a hack site is way more work dealing with a hack site than enabling some of these things and setting up some preventative measures ahead of time to kind of keep things running smoothly. So any questions about the reCAPTCHA or the two-factor authentication? This is the thing where you can say two-factor authentication is required for administrators. You could even require it for editors or authors as well. You could give a grace period or not. You could say, hey, you're a new editor, you set that up right away. So that's up to you. And you could allow remembering of a device for 30 days. Lots of options in here, lots of options that you can check out. So any questions about that? Okay, so, well, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today for security and backups. I just wanted to show you those. And then those will run. They're set up on our site. They'll run. We'll get emails from WordFence. We'll be able to see our backups in Dropbox or in Google Drive, and we'll know that we have set some things up well, and that we can continue to work on our site and do whatever it is that we're going to do, add new content or new functionality, contact forms, or whatever it is. We'll go forth from there. So any questions at all, or questions about something else?
Renee, I have a question. It's about the proxy cache plugin that you've got there. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the way Pair Networks work, the host that is hosting this site, they use, I think it's the Varnish cache. That's how their caching is done. So they actually install this for me automatically. And what happens is it automatically empties the cache when I modify content. So if I change a post or change a page, it will clear the cache for me. Now, it doesn't always work. Caching is one of those things where it's like wonderful and terrible at the same time. So it's wonderful because it speeds up my site, but it's terrible because when I go in to change something, it doesn't look like it changes, and I'm pulling out my hair like, well, I changed it, it's not working. It's caching. So that's something that is added automatically by Pair, but I do recommend caching on your website, and there's lots of caching plugins. I'll search for cache, and then we can kind of see a couple. I'll give some thoughts. So Lightspeed. So Lightspeed cache, I would typically install if I have a website on a Lightspeed server. So you would know that your host would tell you that. Your host would say, this is a Lightspeed server, and you would install this Lightspeed caching plugin. WP Fastest Cache is a good one. Total Cache, Super Cache, these are good. I haven't used this. The SiteGround Optimizer is another one of those things that I would probably only use if I had a site on SiteGround. I'm looking for, I've heard about this one, Breeze, but I don't know, this doesn't look amazing to me. So this is the one we're using, Proxy Cache Purge. I like Auto Optimize, but I haven't used it in a long time, so I don't see it here. Let me search. What does it say beta on it? I don't know. So maybe pick one of those other ones. These Total Cache, Fastest Cache, Super Cache, those all seem like pretty good options. And let me think of it. Just in cachingexplain.com. If you have not seen this, this is like, read this first so that you can understand what caching is. It makes it a lot easier to understand the concept of caching, so that you can understand like what it does. If your host is a good host and they are reliable and fast, they may offer some caching at the hosting level for you. So you may or may not need a plugin. It's really up to you. It's kind of one of those things too that you could see, depending on what you're doing and what you're using, your site may be fine. It may be fast enough and you may not worry about it. But if you're like, oh, my site's running a little bit slowly, what are some things I could do, after you cleaned up your plugins, after you compressed your images, maybe installing a caching plugin is something you can do. You can also take your page speed score. GT metrics is one where you can put your URL in and test your site and just see what score it is. This is not the be all end all. If you get a B or a D or whatever, that's not like the worst thing ever, but it is sometimes just good to kind of get a baseline. That way, if you install a caching plugin, you can see if it improves your speed. Yeah, WP Rocket is a popular one. If you want to pay, that's a premium one. That is one that people do use a lot. One thing I find intimidating with caching plugins is that I don't know what all the options mean. Like, I don't know what the defer JavaScript and like, and I work with websites every day. So to me, if I don't understand it, like, how can someone who just has one website kind of understand those things. So yeah, very overwhelming, right, Amy? Like just, you're like, oh my God, I don't know what all these options are. So again, this is a thing where if you have some friends who have websites, they like a plugin or don't like a plugin, you look at the reviews, you look at the settings, you try it out for you, and you say, oh, okay, this makes sense, and this made my site faster. Good, fine, move on to the next thing you want to do. Don't worry so much that you pick the wrong plugin or you don't have the right settings. Kind of just do what you can, I guess is what I'm thinking of. Does that help? Was that a long, long rambling answer?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, any other questions? Yeah, just about anything too. But I love this Caching Explained. Give it to my students. Really great explanation of what's happening. Any other questions? Oh yeah, so Amy says she's starting to add simple history. So let's look at that one. User activity log audit. That's interesting. So you can see who did what when. Oh, that's nice. That's good to know. Yeah, I'll check that out. We could have meetups and meetups and meetups just on plugins. Like this plugin, there are so many plugins out there. I mean, it's wonderful because there's so many options, but also it can be really difficult because I don't know which one to pick. This one's no longer supported. It can be challenging from that perspective. So yeah, I'll check this one out. Thanks. Anything else? Any questions? Any questions at all? Anything else that you might want to learn in the future? And you can always email me as well, or put a comment on the meetup, hey, I really want to know about X or Y or Z. Yeah, Andy makes a good point. Yeah, be careful with having 1,000 plugins when you only need 6. Yeah, exactly. I would keep that plugin list pretty trim. There's actually another plugin that I will sometimes recommend. It's called Plugin Notes. Because what will happen with me is I'll install 5 plugins trying to test one out, and then I don't remember which one I picked or which one I'm using or why. So this is nice. Plugin Notes, you can install this. I know it's not tested, but what will happen is that you can go to your plugins, and then on the right hand side here, you can add a note. So you can say this one, this is for my own backups to Dropbox. Save note. And then this is another one. This is security scanning for my website or website. So then you know which ones you're using and why. And later on, you're like, why don't I install that? What am I using that for? Because it can be difficult to get rid of a plugin. Not from this screen, you can get rid of anything, but you just don't know if you're using it. You don't know what's going to break. So this is, I like this plugin sometimes for some sites, just so you're like, okay, oh yeah, that's why I installed that. That's what it's doing. So that's an option. But yeah, I would try to keep your plugin list trim. Also, because the more plugins you install, all those developers are different, and they're doing an update, and you're updating this, updating that, updating this, updating that, more opportunities for things to conflict. So, by all means, if you need a plugin, install it. That's what we have it for, but just don't go overboard. And also, after you have tested things out and you know what you want to keep, get rid of those other ones. Deactivate them, delete them. You don't need them there if you're not using them.
I really like that tool, plugin notes, because
Yeah.
that's exactly, so there is no way of saying, if you've inherited a site and it's got plugins, you can't tell which it's using or not. I got one and it had 3 different form plugins, and I'm like,
Yes.
which one's it using, or is it using
Yes.
all of them at different forms, or
Yes.
and I can't tell.
Yes.
Is there a way to tell? Or
well, so one thing that you can do in it for the form specifically, So what I would try to do is get a list of the pages. So you don't want to go through the menus. You may have pages on the site that are not in the menu. So you do want to go through each page. But one thing you can do is inspect. So I will. Let's see, go to my contact page. And if you right click and inspect, not accessibility properties. So if you look and you see here, this says G field and G form. So that's a gravity form. You'll see other ones that are like NF form. That's a ninja form. So CF7, that would be contact form 7. So you could inspect and try to determine what's being used, but also if you edit the page, it should say gravity form or contact form. And really, yeah, just going through those pages to see what's being used. But yeah, a lot of it is trial and error, deactivating, seeing if anything's broken, reactivating again. I have this problem with block plugins. I have a couple sites that have a few block plugins installed, and I don't know what blocks are being used on which pages. And I deactivate and I'm worried about something breaking. So it is a little bit of trial and error.
I've got a great one for finding those blocks. It's called
Oh.
Find My Blocks.
Find my blocks. Amazing, amazing. Okay, so let's go look. Find my blocks.
It works great.
Find my blocks. It'd be nice if there was a find my contact form. Yeah, Amy mentioned in the chat, yeah, some large plugins do 100 things and some small ones do one thing. So yeah, it is not the total quantity. So yeah, you do want to be mindful. Yeah, you may have more plugins. It's not just a total quantity. Just making sure you're using what is installed on the site. Ooh, cute. Okay, so find my blocks. Nice. Reusable block, nested block. That's neat. Yeah, I have to try that out. Very cool. Nice. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for the tip. Very cool. If you have a access to a staging site, back to that about the contact forms. If you have access to a staging site, you could make a copy of the site and just start deactivate, look at things, see if anything broke, deactivate, look at things, see if anything broke. So that way you wouldn't do anything, on the live site to jeopardize, something's not working properly. But yeah, it can be difficult to see what's being used where.
If you download the full version of Health Check and Troubleshooting, you can disable plugins only for yourself and still leave the rest of the site.
Oh, that's cool. So can you find that in the repository or is it paid?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay,
in the repository.
So health, what was it again? Sorry. Oh, right there. Health check and
that's the one.
troubleshooting. Cool. Okay, so that's cool. So you can deactivate for a just for you. That way you can see. That's pretty cool. Yeah, very nice. Have I done a session on setting up a staging site? I have not. I don't think in a long time. Typically, I'll use a host at this point that has staging sites. So I don't typically use any additional tools to set up a staging site. I do kind of push clients towards hosts that give you a staging site option. But yeah, not everybody has access to one. So that could be a valuable session as well. Yeah, on staging sites. Yeah, anything else? Anything else that anybody wants to ask or tell me? It's good for me to know too. Okay, well, It was great to see everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I will download this later and I will upload it tomorrow to the YouTube channel. I'll put a comment on the meetup so you can get back to it. But if you just go to wppittsburgh.com, you'll be able to find it there tomorrow. And hopefully I'll see you all at a future meetup. Thanks so much for coming.